are doing it, right? It's amazing what God does in the midst of the people that love Him. And there are Christians all throughout our schools, and there's some good work being done. So I'm grateful today that a couple months ago when we were taking Teddy for orientation at his school, and just kind of randomly walking through the gym, see this CampusLife sign or whatever, so I go over and check it out and talk to Michaela, find out it happens every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., and they're looking for volunteers and, of course, students. So me and Teddy both sign up, and we've been part of that for the last 2 months of school or whatever it's been. And just excited to have Michaela here today with us. And she is the Campus Life Director in the Southport school system. So that means she works in the 6th grade academy, the middle school, the 7th and 8th grade. And she also does some stuff with the high school crowd too. So just some amazing things. So welcome, Michaela, as she comes to speak this morning.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? I've never used one of these before. Okay, great. So like Pastor Nathan said, my name is Michaela, and I do Campus Life. So maybe you've heard of Campus Life, maybe you haven't. It's actually one of the ministry models of Youth for Christ. And so we'll kind of get into that a little bit later, but we do offer other things as well beyond Campus Life, so I just kind of want to give you a small vision of what Youth for Christ really looks like. So like I said, we're one of the ministry models. We have a few others. I'll just mention a couple. We have something called City Life Wheels, and it's downtown, and it's a group of guys teaching students how to work on cars. They do typically get more boys than girls, but they do get girls sometimes. I'm like, yeah, go girls. But they learn how to fix cars, and from there they can get internships and become mechanics and just find lifetime jobs. But it's also something to get kids off the street from doing things maybe that aren't so great for them, and to like be putting their hands to work. And then, but also in the middle of that, being able to hear the story of Jesus and how He can impact their lives. And then something else that we do is called Parent Life, and that is working with young people who are parents. And it's not just young moms, but it's also young dads as well. And so we have a handful of outreaches in that kind of way, and then there's a bunch of us Campus Life directors who are placed in a specific school system. And so I was definitely blessed to be put in Southport. I had actually never heard of Southport before this job, so it just happened so cool, and I'll share more of that in a little bit. But yeah, so that's just a little bit. And Pastor Nathan asked me to come and just share my Jesus story and how I came to find the Lord and to be called into ministry, and how I came to be at Campus Life. And so just kind of wanted to share that with you today. And so I just kind of want to start by saying, what would Jesus do? And I feel like the typical response is He would love first, right? And that was something that I had to learn kind of when I was older in life. I always knew that Jesus loved me, but I didn't really know what that looked like. I didn't know what it looked like to love others through Jesus. I was definitely blessed to be born in a Christian home and raised in a Christian home. My mom is actually here. Hi, Mom. I called her out. I always do that. But I was raised in a Christian home, and to be honest, my mom was definitely the spiritual leader of our house. I don't mean to speak ill of my dad, but he has definitely had his hard times with the Lord, and right now isn't currently really living for the Lord. So if you guys would pray for him, that would be great. I'd appreciate that. But my mom was always consistent in my life, and she was always there, and always was just the person I needed as the example in my life. And so we grew up in the same church my entire life. I do not attend there now, but and I don't mean to speak ill of a church, and that's not ever my intention, but there were definitely some times where there was some hurt and just misled teachings, and I felt like there was a lot there that I learned about the Bible incorrectly, which kind of affected my relationship with the Lord for a long time until I was basically in college. But I was saved at a young age. I know a lot of people are like, you should know the day you were saved. To be honest with you, I cannot remember the date. But I do believe I was around 7 years old. And from then on, I was so excited. I just wanted all my friends to know about Jesus, and I wanted to like just be that light in everyone's lives. And with some of the teachings that I grew up with, I definitely don't think I did it right. I think there was sometimes more shoving it down their throats rather than just approaching them with love. And that takes time to learn, right? It takes time to learn how to share the love of Jesus with people. But I was just so excited to love Jesus. I definitely feel like I was not like the typical kid growing up. Like church was my life, and it was so important to me. We would be in church all the time. My mom was actually the children's director at the church for a long time. My dad was on the worship team. We always had prayer nights. We had all kinds of stuff that we were always at church. So for me, it was just normal. I was like, oh, I'm in church four days a week? Yeah, that's normal. And other kids would be like, Michaela, that's not normal. Well, for them, it's not normal, you know. So that was just my life. And I was just like, I just want to do the right thing and whatnot. But being a leader's kid can sometimes be hard in the church. And I have Teddy saying, mm-hmm. But like he gets it, you know. I know I wasn't the pastor's kid, but it felt like I was the pastor's kid. It was a smaller church, and so like everyone knew everyone, and so it was just really easy for me to feel pressured, and just feel like I had to always be perfect, you know. No one ever said, Michaela, you have to be perfect, but I definitely had those moments where I felt like I had to be. The way certain things were approached to me, I felt like I wasn't allowed to struggle with things, or I couldn't share any like sin struggles with trusted leaders. I'm not saying that about my mom, but like other trusted leaders in the church, because I just felt like everyone would know. Everyone would know if I sinned. Or I would just be scolded and told, no, that's not okay, instead of, again, approaching it with love. And I think that was just the missing factor, was love in that church. And it just breaks my heart that we just didn't see that. And so, so I felt like I needed to just grow up really quickly, especially since Mom was the children's director. We would have days where she would maybe make a competition, like whoever memorizes the most memory verses gets a prize, or the typical incentive. We do that at CampusLife. I'm like, if you bring a friend, I'll give you candy, and they do it. So, and so I mean, it works, right? My mom never forced me. She was never like, you have to memorize verses for Wednesday nights. Like, she let me do my own thing, and I was like, I'm going to get that prize. I was a little competitive, and so I would do it. And then I would win a prize or something, and then she would be accused of favoritism because I'm her daughter. Whoa! And so at a pretty young age, I want to say probably around 10, my mom and dad kind of had to sit me down and say, hey, we can't let you win prizes and stuff anymore. And from then on, I was like, okay, just have to grow up. Like, I guess I don't really get to be a kid. And I don't put that on my parents. I definitely put that on myself a little bit. I could have talked to some people about it, and whatnot. But from then on, I was just like, hey, just have to grow up and just be like this mature person. And that's kind of what held me back from wanting to share any struggles with people, because I felt like eyes were always watching me. And in the moment, I didn't know, like, only eyes watching me that are important are the Lord's, right? And others' opinions, shouldn't define my life, but they did. But I mean, growing up, I got into middle school, good old middle school, and I hit about 8th grade, and the church I grew up in, we always went to like youth conventions and camps and all this kind of stuff, and so they always advertised, almost knocked that over, they almost always advertised this college called North Central University, and that is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it is an Assemblies of God school, and I fell in love with it like probably around 8th grade and at like a youth convention, and I really just felt like the Lord was saying, like, Michaela, that's your school, like that's where you need to go, and I just felt the call into ministry, excuse me, and I didn't really know what that call kind of looked like. I was kind of convinced in the time that it was just strictly worship leading. I did go to school there and get a degree in music and in church leadership because I was convinced. I was like, I had two things. Like, God was like telling me, you're going to be in ministry. So I was like, okay, God. So then I'm going to be, like, I was telling the Lord what I was going to be, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a worship leader. And then I'm going to marry a man who's going to be a youth pastor. Like, that was my plan. So I was like, those are the things that I'm going to do. I don't have either of those currently, but that was my plan, not the Lord's plan, obviously, but I from then I was like, I'm going to North Central. I got to get in there. So I went through high school. I was trying to just get through high school. I was like, get me out of here. I want to go to college. And I bravely only applied for North Central. I didn't apply for anywhere else. And looking back, I'm like, that was risky. But the Lord obviously like called me to it, and I got accepted, and I was so excited to be there. I was like, oh my gosh, my dream school. I was nervous to move because I've only been far away from my family for like tops 2 weeks maybe. But I was like, you know what, a new adventure. I know I'm going to be nervous, but it's going to be fine. And so like leading up to college, I felt like my life was pretty good. I was really confident in my calling. I was confident in my abilities that the Lord had given me. And I was just confident in my relationship with Jesus. And so I moved to Minnesota, somewhere I've literally never really been before. And it actually turned into one of the hardest, loneliest times of my life. I did not expect it. I knew I was going to miss my family. I knew I was going to be a little heartbroken and not get to see my friends all the time. And I had to like start all over, make new friends. But I truly hated it. I started to grow bitter and kind of angry with the Lord. And so I was not happy. And I started to really not spend time with the Lord because I was so angry with him instead of seeking him, which I should have been doing. I was not, and I was just growing more and more angry. And during that whole time, I was supposed to be getting a part of like these worship teams for like certain classes, and I wasn't even getting on the teams. I wasn't making any friends. Like no one was speaking to me, it felt like. And I was dating someone who I should not have been dating. And he actually lived back here in Indiana, and deep down, I knew he did not love Jesus, but I was trying to ignore that and say, oh, I'll just, missionary date and bring him to the Lord that way, and that was obviously not correct. But I was just, so much was going on, and I was so lonely, and I just wanted to move back home and date this guy and all this kind of stuff. And I had finally decided after that first semester, it was so hard, and I truly just hated it. I was so angry at God, and I was like blaming him for everything, and was like, God, like, why on earth would you call me here? Ask me to do all these things. I feel like I've done what you've asked me to do, but this is my life? Like, is this going to be what following you looks like for the rest of my life? Because if so, I want no part of it. I was so bitter. I was so mad. And in that moment, I kind of had decided, you know what? I'm just going to finish my first year. of college. And so if I decide that I want to come back to college, then not this college, because I was done. I was like, nope, never again. But I was like, if I decide I want to go to college, I'll at least have 1 year under my belt. I'll get to transfer quite a bit of credits. And so that was my plan. My plan was to give up on my calling and give up on God, basically, because I was just so angry with him, and I just did not want to live that life if that's what my life was always going to look like. And so, yeah, I had this whole plan, and then the guy that I was like dating or whatever, he broke up with me, and then I was like, well, now I don't want to move back to Indiana because he's there. But I was still angry with the Lord, so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. So I was just in a really rough spot in my life. And our school, well, they still do it to this day, they have something called Praise Gathering, and it's every Wednesday night. And a lot of people serve at church on Wednesdays. I don't know if you guys have stuff here on Wednesdays. I did growing up. My church doesn't now, so I'm like, oh, that's weird to me. But after everyone gets back from like serving in youth group or whatever, we would all come, and it was optional. It was not required, but from 10 o'clock to midnight was a worship gathering every Wednesday night. And it was called Praise Gathering, or we would just call it PG. And I had never been to one because, again, I was really bitter. And I was like, nope, I don't want to spend time with God. Like, I'm mad at him. And so I never went. And then there was a girl on my floor at the time who, we had something called discipleship leaders on the floor, who basically led a Bible study once a week and like tried to help us through hardships. But I just was like, nope, don't talk to me. I'm mad. I don't want to talk to you. I think your leadership role is dumb. And fun story, I became a DL later. But anyway, so I was sitting in my room, and one of my discipleship leaders comes in, and she's like, hey, I think you should come to PG with me. And I was like, no, that's not happening. But she kind of fought me for it for a while. I think the Lord was like really like pushing her to take me to PG. And so she didn't give up. And I was like, oh my gosh, fine. Like, get this girl off my back. Fine, I'll go. And so we went, and I walked in there with like the worst attitude I could have had. And I was just at my last straw. I was just so done. And so our chapel had like just the ground floor, and then it also had 2 balconies. So I was sitting up in a balcony because I was like, I'm not sitting on the ground floor. And so I was sitting up there, and I was just so bitter and so upset. And I had my arms crossed, and I'm like looking around, and I'm just watching everyone just worship Jesus and just have this like intimate time with him. And I had been missing that for months at this point. And I was so angry, and I was so jealous. I was like, why, God? Like, why do these people get to feel you and I don't? Why am I going through this? And so in that moment, I was so mad that nothing was happening. I was feeling so numb that I finally like started to pray, and I was like, okay, God, you know what? Like, if I don't feel anything in the next like 5 minutes, I'm done with you, and I'm walking out of here forever. I'm done. And I kid you not, like 5 seconds later, the worship leader on stage just stopped what he was doing. Like, he was in the middle of singing, and he just says, if you don't feel anything, get up here right now. And so I was like, okay, he's talking to me. And so I bolted. I was like, okay, I guess I gotta go, you know. So I went up there, and I went up to one of the girls who was there to pray, and I kind of spilled my life on her. I don't even know this girl. To this day, I don't even know her name. But I kind of just spilled my life to her and just told her everything that I had been going through. And she just began to pray for me. And that's kind of when like the Lord started to soften my heart again. And in that, after she had prayed, she was like, you know what? I just felt like the Lord wanted me to tell you this too. He was saying, like, Michaela, I know you're going through one of the driest seasons of your life. I know that it is not easy. I know you feel so alone, but you are about to see what I have for you. Like, it is about to rain. Your dry season is almost over, and I just need you to hang on for a little bit longer. And that's kind of, I think, the moment where I really just started to understand God's love for me. Not because it had never been talked about before, but just in my lowest point, in the point where I was on the verge of saying, I almost was about to say, like, I hate God, he still loved me. Like, he loved me first more than anything else. And from then on, I just kind of picked myself up. I was like, I don't need that guy anyway. He didn't love Jesus. Don't want that in my life, right? No. He's still actually a dear friend, and I'm still praying for him to this day to come and find Jesus. But I was just like, no, I want to be who God has called me to be. And so I just kind of picked myself back up, and I just really started to hang on to Jesus and start trusting him again. And so, like I said before, I thought, like, when I was a bitter little freshman in college, I thought all the leadership roles, so like our RA, our resident advisor, and our discipleship leaders, all that kind of stuff. I remember like sitting in the room when I first met them, and I was like, that's stupid, I'll never do that. Well, I became a discipleship leader the next year, and then the year after that I became a resident advisor, and then the year after that I became the assistant resident director of our entire building. And I actually ended up being there for 5 years, so then I went back to RA because I was like, I love that job. And from there, the Lord also really just put people on my heart. I still love worship. It's part of my major. It's part of what I majored in, and I still participate in worship leading at my church and whatnot, but the Lord really taught me a lot about myself and like how much he loves me. Like, that's how much he loves anyone in this room, anyone who comes to Campus Life. Last year we had a young lady, I can't say her name because safety reasons, but she would walk in every single week and remind me that she was an atheist. And every week, but she still showed up, right? And I said, great, we love you. We're happy to have you, you know. I think that was what I was always missing, was just loving others and like Jesus loving others. And he still to this day reminds me. There are people in my life that I struggle to get along with in certain like times and contexts of my life. And when I'm struggling with that, the Lord's like, hey, I love them. And so that's kind of just where my heart is just loving people and just showing them the love of Jesus first and foremost before anything else. Before we show up and we're like, hey, that's a sin, don't do that. It's like, hey, Jesus loves you, you know. And then building that relationship and talking about how to accept him in your life, you know. So that was kind of my story of like how I came to be with Jesus and kind of, I guess, refound the Lord again. But then out of college, I stayed in Minnesota. I ended up loving it. I honestly thought I was going to live in Minnesota for the rest of my life. I was like, hey, God, I'm cool with this, yeah. And I then started feeling about 2 years after living there, after graduating, I felt like the Lord was starting to nudge my heart a little bit back to Indiana. And I was like, nope, not going to do that. And so we fought a little bit, you know, but obviously the Lord won, of course, as he always does. And it was a struggle because I just loved it there so much, and I had established like such great friendships and great just surrounding and atmosphere. And so at that time, though I was not working a job in ministry right out of college, the Lord was very adamant, and he was like, Michaela, you've been in leadership for 4 years at college. I need you to take a small step back and just rejuvenate, refresh, you know, like I don't want burnout in your life. And so I just got a job as a daycare teacher. That was interesting. Not my calling. Little ones, not my calling, I have learned, but that's okay. That's a special gift for certain people, and it's not me. I'm like, teenagers and up, we're great. And so when God was in the process of saying, okay, Michaela, it's time to move back, I was like, okay, Lord, yes, I'll move back, but can we talk about, you know, getting back into ministry? And I just felt like he really was like, okay, yep, this is the time. And so I had actually just hopped on Indeed.com, if anyone's ever heard of that, where you just look for jobs there, and I literally was just typing Indianapolis ministry jobs. And I found actually a different church, kind of in Greenwood, and they were looking for a worship leader. And I was like, perfect, I can do that. And so I actually went through the whole process there, and I truly, truly thought I was going to get this job. And like, this is kind of one of my favorite parts of this story. After one of my interviews there, I was driving back to the person's house I was staying, and I remember coming out of Greenwood. I'm horrible at directions, but I was coming somewhere out of Greenwood, and I ended up stopping at Southport Road. And in that moment, the Lord was like, Michaela, that is an important road. Remember that road. So I'm thinking, great, I'm going to be this worship leader. I got the job. Like, I was so excited. A couple days later, I get a phone call. Hey, we're not going to hire you, actually. We're going a different direction. And I was like, God, what in the world? Like I swear you just confirmed this for me. But I mean, it just goes to show that like our plan is never it, right? It's God's plan for sure. And so I started back at square one, got back on Indeed, and CampusLife popped up, and I was like, "What's this?" Like I had never heard of it. I had never heard of Youth for Christ before, which I'm kind of shocked. I was like, "How have I never heard of this organization?" But it kind of looked a little bit similar to some of the leadership roles that I had in college, and I loved those roles. And so I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And so I just sent in my resume, not even knowing absolutely at all what it really was. And I went through a couple of months of like different interviews and showing up to other people's clubs and just observing and whatnot. And a couple months in, I finally got hired. It was a little bit of a longer process than I would have liked, but again, it's just all in the Lord's timing. But I got hired, and they were trying to decide where they wanted to put me, like where they wanted to locate me, with what school. And they finally were like, you know what, Michaela, we want to put you with Southport. And immediately, like that moment of driving through Greenwood and coming up to Southport Road popped right back into my head, and was like, and God was like, remember when I told you this road is going to be important? It's for those students, not for that worship leading position. And I was like, whoa, like it's still just like, gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. And so I was like, wow, God, like you're just so cool. Like, like he just works out things in his own way, even though we think that it's going to go one way. He's like, no, it's this way, and my way's better, right? And so now, not only am I the Campus Life Director at Southport Schools, I also live off of Southport Road. My church that I go to is off of Southport Road. I'm like, okay, God, I get it, you know. And so it's just so many things that just came together, and the Lord has just been so awesome. So then it led me here to Campus Life. So I grew up actually on the west side of Indianapolis, Brownsburg, really. And so I didn't really know the south side very well, like at all. We only came to Greenwood to like shop at the Greenwood Mall, like once in a while, like once a year. But so I really didn't know much about the area and stuff. So these past, actually this month now, October 1st, October 18th will be my second full year here with Campus Life. And so I'm still learning about the culture and like everything around, but it's just such an amazing place. The schools, we are so blessed. We have so many like administration, so many staff who love Jesus, who are like, yeah, come do Campus Life, please. These kids need it, you know. And so it's just so cool to just see like a supportive community, and just to continue to love on these students. It's been such a blessing. Like these kids are wild, but they are so much fun. And we get to do, right now we're doing 2 clubs. So we do, like he said, we do 6th grade academy club. They are one building. The 6th grade academy and the middle school, they are one building, but they act as 2 totally separate schools. So we do one club for the 6th grade and then one club for the middle school, and we're getting ready to start high school small group at least. Just need to continue to build what we have, build our like our volunteer teams and whatnot. But I do have a short video that I kind of want to share. It explains campus life just a little bit better than I do, because there's just a lot of moving pieces to campus life. So we have that for you.
Students, they are our future, but less and less of them are followers of Christ. This generation of youth are the least churched we have ever seen, and almost 30% of them identify as atheists. In the United States, there are over 69,000 middle school and high schools. In those schools are over 24 million students between the ages of 11 and 17. Of those students, at least 15 million do not regularly attend church. CampusLife, a ministry of Youth for Christ, has reached out to these kids for over 45 years. There is CampusLife Ministry spanning the country from San Diego, California to Long Island, New York, and everywhere in between. With over 1,000 ministry sites, we engage over 100,000 students each week, and that number is growing daily. The question remains, with so many lost students, how can we possibly reach them all? How does Youth for Christ reach this skeptical generation that is unaware of their need for a Savior? We don't wait for students to come to us. We intentionally go into their world in order to initiate new relationships, whether it be on campus, hanging out at the skate park, or rooting for their team on a Friday night. We go where students are. As these relationships form, students enter into the community of campus life. One natural way that happens is through Club. Club is a weekly high-energy gathering where community is built and God's story is told. We also create opportunities for students to engage in deeper relationships with campus life leaders through shared experiences. We spend time with students to earn the right to be heard, model Christ-like behavior, and be a listening ear. As relationships grow, we connect with students and give them individual attention to ask questions, share doubts, and navigate life. We also provide opportunities for students to gather in small groups where we discuss relevant issues that they face and their spiritual needs. As we do this, we help them connect their story to God's story. Trips are an opportunity to bring students out of their environment. Through unforgettable activities, Christ-sharing relationships, and a clear presentation of the gospel, we see God change lives forever. Throughout this journey, we work together with the local church to help raise up lifelong followers of Jesus. But that is just the beginning. We engage Christian students who are committed to personal growth and influencing the people around them for Christ. These students then join us in the mission of sharing God's story with their friends and raising up lifelong followers of Jesus. Many of them even return to Youth for Christ as volunteer or staff leaders. So, with so many lost students, how do we reach them all? By empowering a relational army of student and adult leaders to engage students in authentic, Christ-sharing relationships, one student at a time.
So that's just kind of a small vision of what campus life is about. I became a campus life director because I wanted to give students the chance to hear about Jesus. I wanted to give students the chance to be seen, feel heard, and feel safe. And just for them to have trusted adults in their life that they feel they can come to when they are afraid to go to their parents, which is something that I know, young Michaela desperately wanted. So I just want that for them. And so we're committed to coming alongside young people and just meeting them, like the video said, meeting them where they're at. We seek to help young people navigate the pivotal years of middle school and high school, and uncovering God's story in their lives. And as you saw in the video, this is not something I can do alone. This is something I need a whole army for, right? And it doesn't mean that I just need everyone to volunteer. There are moving pieces, like I said, to this, and so I just ask that you would just consider to be in prayer with me, be in prayer with me to actually start a community of prayer partners that I can just lean on and say, hey, I need you to pray for this situation, like right now. Someone I can like maybe text or email or send like a newsletter and just say, hey, we need your prayers. I could really use prayers for finding more volunteers. We have a lot of boys that show up, and we have a lot of women leaders, which they're amazing, and they still meet the boys where they're at too, but we are obviously learning that these boys need more men in their lives as well. We also are always looking for financial partners, so prayers through that as well. This is like kind of a missionary funding kind of position, and just prayer for more students and that they get the opportunity to hear the name of Jesus and to have that opportunity to be introduced to him and start a relationship with him. So, thank you.
I want to open it up for some Q&A. I have a few questions, but if you guys have some questions too, I'm sure we'll have time for that. But one of the ministry models that you use is dodgeball and donuts.
Yes.
And I'm not sure which ones the kids come for, whether it's dodgeball or donuts or both, but they definitely have a lot of fun doing it. So tell us a little bit more about maybe what to expect, like what do kids do in the hour or so that you have them on like a Wednesday or Thursday?
Absolutely. So at Club, what we do is we get an hour with them. So it is early in the morning, and I am not a morning person, so it's very interesting. But we start at 7 a.m., and we kind of give them the first like 10-ish minutes, 10, 15 minutes to come in and just start hanging out. So a lot of them will like grab a basketball or whatever and just start playing, and they'll form little groups and just start playing games and whatnot, or just hang out and chat, you know. And then we always play like a big group game, at least one. Most of the time it's two, but at least one. Sometimes it kind of goes with like the lesson that we do. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the lesson. It's just like, okay, let's just get you moving. But so we'll play like a big group game or two. And then kind of right in the middle of the hour, we do something called wrap-up time. And so with Club, it is more high energy. So it's obviously it is Jesus focused, but it's not like the biggest focus right now. Club is really just getting to know students, and then inviting them into that space to eventually also grow out of, they can still come to Club, but like grow out of that, start small groups and whatnot, and really go deeper into the Bible. But we do a wrap-up discussion kind of halfway through, about 10-ish minutes, where we introduce Jesus to them. Like we have that opportunity to share like a Bible story and really just compare it to things that they're going through in life. So, I mean, it's hard to be a middle schooler sometimes, right? Like everything's changing and whatnot. So we kind of just use those things and say, okay, well, like what does God have to say about that? And so we get to do that for about 10-ish minutes, and then like you said, we always end in a game of dodgeball, which they love, and then they always get a donut when they leave. So
can't go wrong with that, for
right?
sure.
Yeah.
I know the theme that you have for this year. I really like it. Tell us a little bit about what your theme is this year and where you're going with that. Yeah,
for sure. So every year, Campus Life has a new theme for the whole year, and so they provide curriculum for us. But last year, what was our theme? It was, I forgot. Anyway, but this year it's called The Different Life. And so it's just, we're able to tell kids like, hey, like you don't have to fit in with the crowd. We're encouraging you to live your life differently, and that is by following Jesus. And so it's just, we just tell them it's different. And so that's their word for the year. And so they're like, different, whenever we ask them. So it's just really funny. But just we're encouraging them to like basically stand out and to do the right thing.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned volunteers. So if I were to sign up to be a volunteer, what would I do? You know, I'm not a good speaker. or someone might say that. But what would I do if I helped out?
Yeah, absolutely. There are all kinds of things that volunteers could do. I would never ask someone who's uncomfortable to speak. I would say, hey, where are your talents? I would get to know my volunteers for sure. And so a lot of us rotate. And so there are a handful who don't speak at all, and they're like, no, I don't want to lead that. And I'm like, that's really okay. You don't have to. So we do rotate. So it's not just me talking all the time, because I feel like the kids would be bored. But so some leaders do help with sharing wrap-up. Some leaders help with taking attendance when they all just pile in and just run in. We're like, no, we need to get your name. And some help us set up donuts. Some help us just lead games. Or we've also had leaders who don't really love to do physical activity and whatnot, and that's okay. And if they see a kid who doesn't really want to play a game, like they just go and they sit with that kid and get to know them. So there's all kinds of different things that a volunteer can do. I would never expect someone to do something they're not comfortable with, but I also do like to sometimes try and push people a little out of their comfort zone and be like, hey, go talk to that kid, go see what's up, yeah, so a lot of different opportunities.
You kind of touched on this, but I kind of want you to elaborate a little bit more, because you said it was a missionary position, but you kind of kept going pretty quickly. In other words, you raise your support just like any other missionary.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how can we give to that?
Yeah, I mean, I am always looking for like monthly givers, and really for me, it's whatever someone is comfortable giving. I'll be honest, it's probably the hardest part of my job is asking for money. I just don't love it. I'm like, no, I don't want people to think that I'm just trying to talk to them for money. But it's really like we go by monthly. But I mean, even just a one-time gift also is more than accepted and whatnot. It really, the funding helps with a lot of things. Like donuts aren't free, right? So we got to buy a bunch of donuts, and we bring our own equipment. We don't even use the school's equipment. We bring all of our own. So we have dodgeballs, we have basketballs, we have all kinds of stuff. We have a stereo, like all kinds of stuff. So it actually, the money does go to youth and whatnot. So
I just have one more question. Now, you did not mention anything about this today, but you mentioned it to us, the group of leaders, Wednesday. You mentioned appointments, and I thought that really stood out to me, because I was like, oh, that's awesome, because I'm like, maybe I want to do that too. An appointment, she explained it as pastoral counseling with the students. So could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, for sure. So this doesn't happen at all schools, but the middle school, the counselors they came together and they're like, we need to do this. Again, it's a bunch of believers, so they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. But they actually invite a bunch of like pastors and people in ministry roles to come and do appointment times with students. And so what that looks like is kind of like counseling. All good. It kind of looks like counseling in a way, where I get to do this with all girls, obviously, and I get to, on Wednesdays, I sit in a conference room all day long, and I just call one girl in at a time, and I get to just hear about them and just let them know that, like, they're cared for, they're seen. Sometimes they don't want to talk about God, and I'm like, that's okay. Like, you know what? I'm going to show you that I love you. I'm going to show you that I care about you, and then we can, get into talking about God, because most of the time, I'll be very honest, the counselors refer students to me who constantly are in trouble, who have very bad attitudes. So most of the time they're like, no, I don't believe in God. I'm like, okay, great. Like we're gonna hang out, and I do believe in God. So that might come up in conversation here and there. And so yeah, they offer it with a handful of pastors, and I can get you more info as well. But yeah, I'm currently the only female that does it. So I'm like, man, we need some more female leaders to be able to do this as well. So.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions?
Like, how many students come Yeah. So we continue to grow. Like our number just continues to add. Right now with 6th grade, we're almost at 30. So this last week we had 28. We started, I think, around like 18, and every week we've gained like 2 or 3 more students at a time. And so right now we're about like at 28. I would not be shocked if we hit 30 by this next coming week. Middle school has been a little bit more tricky. I feel like there's always like one that's like a lot higher in numbers and one that's a little bit lower. But again, I think there's a lot of boys and there's a lot of women leaders. And so they're just like, oh, this is lame. But right now, last year we only had 10 boys that showed up in middle school. And this year, right now, we have 18 total students. A few girls, but mostly boys. And we're still continuing to grow in that area as well.
Anybody else? Awesome. Well, thank Michaela for coming today, and she did set up a little bit of a table, so if you want to sign up to get on her email list or talk to her about volunteering or give to her the ministry of CampusLife or Youth for Christ, that'd be great. So much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're just going to, I think we're going to change and not do the last song. I think that's appropriate for today. But did just want to mention a couple things that are going on in the next couple of weeks. Next week, Pastor Rick Matthews will be back here to join us. So this will be the first time that he's spoken here since he's retired. So that'll be exciting. Let people know about that. And then the following week, 2 weeks from today, we're celebrating 56 years in ministry. You have probably received an invitation in the mail. If you haven't RSVP'd, we would love to get that RSVP back. In fact, you could actually probably just tell Mary or Melinda that right now, and so we can make sure we know the numbers coming up for that. With that, let's close in prayer, and we'll send you on your way. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much. You are so good, and we love you. Thank you so much for ministries like CampusLife and Michaela, devoting her time to the students that may not know you. I pray for the different clubs that she leads. I pray for the different appointments that she'll have on Wednesdays. I pray that people will come to know you through Michaela and CampusLife ministry. Lord, continue to use it and continue to spark life into it. And I pray for us too, that we would be encouraged, that we would be challenged to figure out the things that are going on in the community that we can join and partner you with. So Lord, we love you. We praise you in your name. Amen. With that, go have a great day. Go love God, love others, and serve all.